So we're doing the candle breath today. And one of the things, so we use that in the world of Alexander. We use that very simple blowing out. It's a really good precursor to doing any voice work or anything, because of course when we're speaking we're breathing out. So it's a really good precursor to doing anything like that. But what I like about it is that it's simple enough that we can release that jaw and really sort of let that jaw hang forward and down. We don't have to hang on to that jaw to do it. So it's not a complicated out breath, when of course if we were speaking, that is much more complicated because we're making the shapes in our mouths and the tension can really come there. So the things you want to be thinking about are all the same things: that soft tongue, the sort of ease between that hinge of the upper and lower jawbone. So I'd like us to think a little bit with the legs today. Because if we can undo our legs, that frees up the diaphragm. And I'll just sort of recap. I think it was this class, actually it might have been the yoga class, we were talking about it. If we're tight in the legs, because one end of that deep psoas muscle connects to the thighs and it runs all the way up the front of your spine up towards your solar plexus, you're connecting to your diaphragm. If we're tight in the legs, in the thighs, that pull down into the thighs is going to stop your diaphragm freely moving upwards. And I'm just going to remind you here that when you breathe out, the diaphragm goes up in space like a big open umbrella. And when we breathe in, the diaphragm flattens off or sinks down and moves out to the sides like a big swimming pool. So there's some images for you. So I don't want you to think about your breathing right now. We'll start with a little bit of freeing the neck, like we always do. Freeing the neck, easy in the jaw, and reminding yourself that the weight of your head can rest onto that block. And I know this is a morning class, so it's quite likely that we haven't had too much excitement or heightened nervous system action this morning, but it's still useful to settle and be still and calming ourselves, in order that then when we give our Alexander directions, we're giving those directed thoughts to a calm body. So letting the weight of your head rest on your block, letting the shoulder girdle rest into the ground, reminding your back that it needs to be easy and free, and softening through the superficial muscles that wrap all the way around, from your back all the way around the sides and through to the front, the breastbone. All of that easy and relaxed. And then of course, soft belly, wide back. From your widening back, you can be thinking of the knees springing up to the ceiling and releasing forwards and away from each other. Letting your feet rest on the ground. Saying hello to your left foot, saying hello to your right foot. Asking for the ankles to release, a bit of freedom around the ankles, or thinking of those secure fascial bands that wrap around and give your ankles support. Thinking up through the shin bones, up through the knees, and releasing knees up to the ceiling and away from each other, knees forwards and away, that spiraling. So taking a bit of time just to organize ourselves, and maybe if, like me, you were chipping the render off the front of your house yesterday, you might want another thought to a free neck. There might need a little bit more ease needed through the shoulder girdle. And as you're asking the neck to free and thinking of the shoulder girdle resting, you can think the tops of your arms away from each other. Asking for that widening from the top of one shoulder all the way across to the top of the other. So using your tremendous skills of observation that you now have within your own self, your sensory feedback, your awareness, I'd like you to make an O sound with your mouth, and in your own time, breathing in through your nose and then just out through your mouth. Like you're breathing and blowing out a candle. And it's a slow, steady, rather than a puff. It's not a birthday candle. It's more probably useful if you were trying to get a fire going, you know, that kind of. Close your lips, let the air come rushing back in. And release the jaw again, soften the tongue. And have another little go at breathing out, blowing out that candle. Closing your lips and the air will just come rushing in again because that's what happens. We don't have to do the in-breath, it does itself. And then another go. And perhaps noticing if there was any tension, maybe, you know, because we are making a shape with our mouth, there might have been a bit of tension in the jaw or the neck or even through the ribs and the diaphragm and belly. But for me, one of the things I notice most is a tendency to hold around the tops of the thighs, that somewhere in the hips and the groin, there's a switching on that doesn't need to be there. So let's just pop down to the pelvis and switch some stuff off. I'd like you to bring your awareness to the backs of your the backs of the thighs, the uppermost parts of the backs of the thighs, right up by your sit bones. And you're going to think of the backs of the thighs widening, and you could think of the whole of the lower seat widening. You could think your sit bones away from each other, widening through the pelvis. And then you're going to say to yourself, I just want to release in the groin, in the inner thighs, relaxing and letting go. And you might find that easier if you allow your knees to fall inwards to each other and rest on each other. So you're giving up any sort of holding in the pelvis, that you don't even have to hold your own legs up. We're going to just let those knees fall in and rest on each other. And at that point, that belly can soften and let go and relax. And nothing needs to happen. If you remember from our last block, we talked about spirals, and so there's sort of a bit of a rolling in that happens around the groin and the tops of the thighs there in this position, and we can really allow that ease, that softness. But you're still thinking soft belly, wide back, and you might think soft belly, wide sit bones. Or it might be that you're aware of your costal arch, the top of the costal arch up by the diaphragm, just easy and free and wide. And whilst you're having a little thought to this undoing through the legs, relaxing them as much as possible, in your own time, have another little candle breath. Blowing the air out gently, steadily, letting the air come rushing back in again because you closed your mouth, and that's what air does. And noticing whether it makes a difference, having the legs in this kind of very relaxed, not doing anything, not trying to help sort of way. Is that something that you're noticing, a change in you, a change in the ease of that diaphragm springing upwards to allow the air out on the out breath? It's probably 3 breaths are enough or maybe, you know, you wouldn't want to keep doing it because it sort of changes stuff. So we don't need to talk about that now, but yes. So just a few breaths, just we're experimenting, we're seeing how it all feels. And then if you want to bring your knees back to parallel, and we're going to do a little bit of rocking and rolling in the pelvis because that's what we love. And you can start quite steady and small with your rocking and rolling in the pelvis, and feel free to really let that build up. If your arms are laying on you, you could always throw them out by the sides of you to give you a sense of support. You might need that kind of that feeling of groundedness through the upper body, through the arms, to continue to allow the pelvis its freedom, softness. As you let the legs rock over to one side, for example, over to the right, relax the left groin. As you let your knees rock over to the left, relax the right groin, the right inner thigh, the jaw. Can we really get a sense of this easiness? As you're letting the knees rock over to the right, press down a bit through the left foot. As you're letting the knees rock over to the left, press down a bit through the right foot, sending that tone and support up through the legs. Don't overly close the knees, let them have a bit of width at some point. Perhaps letting the stance, if that's a word when you're lying down, be wider. Noticing that elasticity that this rocking and rolling demands all the way through the torso, really, from the rib cage down through to the pelvis. And don't suddenly stop, but bring yourself back to stillness with slower, smaller movements, perhaps a bit more tilting in the pelvis or scooching from side to side through the pelvis, until eventually you're back to a still semi-supine position. If you have put your arms out by the sides, if it's comfortable, leave them there and let them rest. Remember, the arms and the lungs are all quite connected, so we do need to let those upper arm bones rest back into the floor, whatever position you're in. We need to allow for some undoing through the armpits, the elbow joints, the wrists, the hands. Thinking the tops of the arms away from each other, to free off, to take the shoulder girdle away from the top of the ribs so it's not getting in the way of those ribs expanding and releasing as you breathe. Undo your armpits, free your neck, and in your own time, just allow that head to roll side to side. Even as you're rolling your head from side to side, keep undoing the tops of your thighs. Send that directed thought. I release the tops of my thighs as I breathe. Just normal breathing at the moment, just regular. but keeping that freedom around the tops of the thighs. Bring your arms somewhere comfortable once your head is still. And let's have another thought, or let's have another go at this breath. So this time I just want you to breathe out first in that normal way we did last time, where we emptied all the breath. All the breath goes out. Lips are closed, in breath through the nose. And then blowing out the candle. Close the lips, in breath. Blowing out the candle. As you blow out the candle, can you allow a softness through the belly? Can there be a slow ripple all the way up through to the diaphragm as the air leaves? Those abdominal muscles really doing their best not to get in the way. But of course there'll be movement there, as there is movement everywhere. Breathing out again. Let the air come in. As if there was a soft, gentle length coming from the pubic bone all the way up and out through with your breath. Okay. So rock and roll your way onto your side and come on up to all fours. Take your time. So we're going to do that very well-known yoga move, the cat-cow. And we'll just sort of have a go, really, I think, to begin with. I mean, once you get onto all fours, feel free to rock forwards onto your hands, release the legs, remind yourself the tops of the thighs at the front and the back can release, the groin. Bring the weight back onto the knees, the shins, and allow the something to release through the shoulder girdle, the armpits, the elbows, the hands. And then when you're back to, then finding your way back to sort of an even balance between hands and knees. And it's up to you really how you want to start. You can either start by letting your head drop and your tail release and letting the lower to middle back arch, round. Oh, it's confusing, isn't it? And then releasing the other way so that then the lower back and the upper back sort of drop forwards. I wouldn't bother with the looking up. I would look ahead of you at the very most, off into the distance. Softening in the legs. Softening in the belly. And allowing that flexibility through the back. And really, if you remember that we want to release around the lumbar thoracic junction and around the back of the diaphragm. Okay. And then if you can just sit back onto your heels or just sit in, yeah, actually have a forward rest. Why don't you? One. The forward rest is a really interesting position for when you're talking about breathing, because of course the back muscles are now free the back of your ribs are free, and you can release them as you breathe. Okay. So I'd just like you to come back to sitting for a moment, because I want to show you something. So just somewhere comfortable. Don't mind how you sit. So here we are with our all fours, and you know, we're doing our cat-cow, where we round the back. So it's rounding through the sort of lower back, and back of the back rim of the pelvis has to release. And this is normally an out breath. And then the other way is we come through sort of a sort of flat back, and then let something release in the upper back, and we're something like this. And this is normally an in-breath. And I don't know which way, you know, whether this is what you were doing, but this is normally how we're taught it in the world of yoga. But being very contrary, as you know I am, we're going to have a go at doing it the other way. And actually, often yoga teachers do get you to switch your breathing over, because for one, it shakes you out of habits, which is really good. And also it's interesting, it's an inquiry, you know, and that's what we're doing here. That's what yoga is, that's what Alexander is. So the thought will be that, you know, I'm releasing the back rim of my pelvis, and that sort of junction around here is releasing up towards the ceiling, and I'm breathing in. I'm breathing in, and as I breathe in, that all of those lovely back muscles can be free and wide, and the ribs are all opening as I'm breathing in. And then I'll pause, and in that pause, I'm going to release something, neck, legs, jaw, as I come into the flat position. And then I'm going to start to breathe out. And I paused, and now I'm breathing in again, which is really difficult when you're talking. And I pause to release, and I'm breathing out. Did that make sense? Yes, okay. And the pause doesn't have to be a long pause. You don't have to hold your breath for any length. It's a moment. And in that moment, you say to yourself, oh, where shall I, you know, is it release my shoulders, perhaps those tops of thighs? For me, it's just all about releasing sort of here and the neck. So we'll have a go, and we'll see where you're needing to release. I'm very aware of my body after putting it through lots of cement render removal yesterday. I'm probably more achy than you lot. Right, so you are welcome to go in your own time. I'll talk you through it again just to begin. So I would breathe out first, and then start to let that back round, letting the back of the diaphragm release up towards the ceiling, back of the pelvis releasing, and you're having an in-breath. through the nose. Breathing in and letting all those back muscles really expand and lengthen and widen, the ribs open out. And then at the top of that breath, you're going to pause, release something, and start the journey with your candle breath. Breathing out. And then once your back is arched, you can pause again, freeing off, releasing something, moving yourself back into a more of a flat back. And then start the in-breath journey where the neck releases and the back muscles open out again. Letting that in-breath really expand the back of you all the way from the lower back ribs down to the back rim of the pelvis. As you round your back, your head drops to the ground, that crown falling away from the back of your diaphragm. And you'll pause, taking your own time now because everyone's breath is different. And whenever you're pausing, you're releasing as you eventually then take yourself into your next move. And you don't want to tire yourself with the breath. It wants to be soft and easy. And like all of these exercises today, you just want to do sort of 2 or 3 at any time, 2 or 3 rounds at any time. And when you have done that, when you've got to the end of your 2 or 3 rounds, I would then recommend dropping your elbows where your hands were and going into a very long, extended armed forward rest. And if that's too dynamic for your day, then just scoot your bum back to your heels and go more into for a child's pose. Both are fine. So when you've had enough of I can't see all of you, but anyway, if you're ready to finish the one that you're on, that would be lovely. And I'd like you to sit upright for a really brief moment. You don't have to, do anything fancy. I mean, do feel free if you like me, like a cushion under you, but we're just going to sit in as balanced as we can for the moment. Because all of this work that we're doing is to create the support, because we want to be able to sit and breathe and stand and breathe. And I would like you to just take a moment now and let the air out, just breathing out. Close your mouth, let the air in, and then in your own time, you're going to just blow a candle out. And once you've blown a candle out, you're going to shut your mouth and let the air come in again. And then blow the candle out. Have a few goes at that. You could probably breathe up to 4 or 5 of those because we're just upright, we're not doing a lot. And I'd like you to, when you're breathing, when you're blowing your candle out, the air's coming up. Just saying, yep, there's the air coming up. Then when the air comes in, there's those lovely opening ribs. Then when you're blowing your candle out, can you let that length, that energy of up, just take you up? Okay. So this work is, as I mentioned earlier, it's a slow, progressive, steady, gets a bit easier, gets a little clearer. So don't worry if if it's feeling a bit intangible at this point. It does for a while, I think. All breath work does for a while. It's very difficult to work on your breathing because it just comes with so much, it's loaded, it's emotionally loaded hugely. So I wouldn't worry too much if it's all a little intangible at the moment. Basically, if you're getting some free movement in your ribs, then you're winning. So let's lie down and just relax for the last 10 minutes, 7 minutes, whatever minutes we've got. As I was just saying, it's very emotional doing any kind of breath work. It's linked to extraordinarily deep emotions. And because of that, it can bring on some extraordinarily deep emotions. So keep an eye on yourself. You know, if you find yourself losing your rag today, or feeling emotional or extraordinarily happy, you know, just accept with equal measure any of those emotions that have come along, and try not to take the negative ones out on your loved ones or friends. But for now, we'll allow ourselves to do nothing. Oh, that marvelous skill that we're all working on, to do nothing. Because fundamentally what we want is to not interfere with your breathing, with our breathing. We want to allow it to function freely. And how we allow the breathing to function freely is by not creating patterns of muscular tension whilst we breathe or live or move or lie here. So we're back to freeing the neck. Asking the neck to free, releasing the jaw, letting the tongue softly rest in your mouth, so that the weight of your head can rest onto the support, onto the books or block. And we'll think of imagining that nodding joint at the top of the spine being very free and easy, so that the head, if it wanted to, could nod forwards at any point, any time. It could sort of rock on its rockers. Neck free, head forward and out. And of course, we're thinking of the head moving away from the top of the spine, out through the crown is where the length is happening. That in turn is encouraging the back muscles to lengthen. And we've been indirectly working on releasing and finding elasticity through the back muscles today. Neck free, head forward and out, back to lengthen and widen. Your widening back muscles that wrap all the way around you. Well, that's another way, isn't it, of saying, allow the rib cage its freedom to move in all which ways it needs to. And that might entail softening through the belly all the way up the costal arch, up to the solar plexus and up to the diaphragm. Soft belly, wide back. Asking for some freedom and release at the tops of the thighs. Reminding yourself that you don't have to grip in the legs in order to lie here or speak or breathe or do anything really. Asking for the tops of the thighs to be free or widening through the upper backs of the thighs. Finding that width through the pelvis, that ease. From your widening pelvis, think all the way through those lengthening thigh muscles, knees forwards, spiraling away from each other. As you're freeing around the kneecaps, as you're releasing the muscles around the kneecaps, you can become aware of the lengthening calf muscles. Backs of the knees soft, calves lengthening all the way down through the Achilles, down through the heel and into the ground. Feel the ground beneath your feet. And know that the support of that ground comes through your feet and up through your shin bones. The support of the ground coming up through your shin bones travels through your free knee joints, along your thigh bones and into your pelvis. Think of that lovely support from the ground traveling through the pelvis and up through the front of your spine. The support from the ground travels up through the front of your spine, all the way up to the base of your skull. Think backs of the ears. Where that head has got the freedom to rock forwards, backwards, sideways, any which way it likes, because we're not gripping through the top of the spine. And to make sure we're not gripping through the top of the spine, we're going to relax the face muscles, smiling, thinking of some good things that we have in our life. Today I was just grateful for the green in my life. So much lovely, luscious trees and nature, and I'm so grateful for it. What are you grateful for? Becoming aware of the shoulder girdle and the support that the floor is offering to the tops of your arms, your elbows, your arm bones, resting. Resting through the shoulder girdle so it gets out of the way of the freedom of those ribs. Almost as if that shoulder girdle could be falling back behind you to allow the freedom of the upper chest, the armpits, the ribs under your armpits. Leave the breathing alone. And finally, becoming aware of the space just below your nostrils, where the air comes in and where the air comes out. Keep it simple. Just breathe. Just be. And as I leave you here on the ground, you'll know that you can roll on your side when it's time for you to get up. But I will just say a reminder, be kind to yourself today. Be kind to yourself as you're working on this breathing stuff. I'll see you all next week. Bye for now.